Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of Purdue Engineering Live. We're going to be talking about experiential opportunities today, which I'll explain in a minute. My name is Ari Swartz. I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of Future Engineers. We're the ones that run these broadcasts. We do all the outreach for Purdue Engineering, talking to you all about what it's like here. I'm joined by 4 students here on camera with me. They'll introduce themselves in a minute. I also have 2 students behind the scenes that are going to be answering your questions directly in the YouTube chat as well. We've got Rachel and we've got Kevin behind the scenes, both current engineering students as well. One's mechanical engineering, one is industrial engineering. And our names are all here on the screen, so you can see our names, what their majors are, as well as what activity they're kind of representing today, although they will be having experience in more than just one thing. But what we're talking about tonight is experiential opportunities. That means research opportunities, internships, co-ops, and study abroad, all available to our engineering students. So we're going to cover those topics, the experiences that our students have. Feel free to send in your questions about any of those topics. And then if you have any questions outside of those too, we'll get to those near the end of the broadcast as well. So with all that said, I'll have my students introduce themselves. So we'll start with Cecilia here. So introduce yourself, where you're from, and then what of these experiential opportunities you have.
All right, sounds good. Hey guys, I'm Cecilia. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. I'm here representing research. This is my second semester doing undergrad research here on campus. I do it in the large-scale Bowen laboratory, a little bit off of campus for civil engineering. But I've also spent a semester abroad in Paris, and I've done the GEARE program as well.
What was your favorite experience in Paris?
Oh my gosh. Well, I actually spent the semester not taking engineering classes, so my school was taught entirely in French, and honestly, I think that was the best experience that I've had. I came really close to double majoring, ended up not doing it, but I became fluent in French, so that was awesome for me.
Nice.
Hi guys, so my name's Paul Dolly. I'm a junior in civil engineering. I have internship experience in the past. I also conduct policy research. It's kind of interdisciplinary research on campus through our Discovery Park program. And then other than that, I am also going on a study abroad in May. It's going to be a 2-week Maymester, and we're going to be studying European transportation systems. So I can talk a little bit about that application process, but some of the other people can also talk about what it's actually like to be abroad.
Hey guys, I'm Teddy Surgiscutter, and I'm a junior in mechanical engineering from Bettendorf, Iowa. I have both internship experience, co-op experience, and research experience. I took fall semester of my sophomore year off and went and worked for 4 months for a company in LaPorte, Indiana. So I can definitely speak to that if you guys have any interest in that.
My name is Courtney Colosimo. I've had 3 different internship experiences, and I've done 2 short-term study abroads. They were both for 2 weeks in the month of May. One was studying sustainability in Stockholm, Sweden. The other was the European transportation trip that Paul was just speaking on. I actually went on it last May.
Awesome. So one of the first things I want to cover, this is a common question we get, what is the difference between internships and co-ops? So obviously, Teddy, you've done a co-op.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the difference between?
Yeah, for sure. So an internship is, you guys probably know what that is. Typically, that's a summer experience with a company where you go and you work for them for 10 to 12 weeks, and that's something that you kind of find on your own. So Purdue has career fairs and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily a Purdue-sponsored program, but co-op is. So co-op is a special thing that Purdue does where you sign on for 1, 3, or 5 sessions with a company, and you go and work for them in kind of alternating sessions during the year and during summers. So for me, I had a 1-session co-op with a company called Aeronautical, so I went and worked for 16 weeks in LaPorte, Indiana. Just took those 4 months off school and went and worked, was basically a full-time employee, lived on my own, did all that kind of stuff. So with co-ops, you get like a little bit of a deeper experience, I think, because it is longer. It's 16 weeks versus 10 to 12, which is an extra month of, you can go deeper into some projects. It's an extra month of money, which is always nice. It's an extra month. I think they invest a little more in you because oftentimes you're signing on for multiple sessions with the company. But comparing those to internships, they're both really good programs, and I definitely recommend them both.
Yeah, we have a variety of options within the co-op program. It started out years ago with just the 5-session co-op program, and we still have that today where you'll work 5 work sessions with a single employer before you graduate. The biggest advantage of that is, well, there's really 2. One, once you interview and you get your job, you know what you're doing for the rest of your time as an engineering student. You don't have to keep reapplying for positions. But 2, when you do graduate, you're going to be graduating with 20 months of work experience. Usually those students are onboarded onto their employer after they graduate as a full-time staff, and they usually get at a higher position and a higher salary than the average graduating student. So real big advantage to that. Obviously, one of the drawbacks for many students is that's a lot of commitment, committing 5 work sessions to one single company. So we also have a 3-session program where you work 3 sessions with an employer. We also have a new flex co-op program where you start working with an employer, and after 2 sessions with that company, you can choose to stay with them for 2 to 3 more sessions, or you can choose to apply for another co-op program with a different employer and be with them for at least 2 sessions too. So trying to increase the flexibility while also keeping the benefits of having longer time to work with an employer. Co-op students generally get larger projects to work on because they know they have you longer, and there's a kind of building up over time track to co-op. You typically alternate semesters. So one semester you're going to be on campus studying, the next semester you go off and work full-time for your employer, come back to school the next semester. And so every time in between your co-op work rotations, you've learned more in classes. And you also have had all that past experience. So when you go back to work, they usually give you a raise, which is awesome. But they also give you progressive responsibilities too. And since they know they have you longer, again, you get longer term projects. They'll even rotate you through different departments oftentimes too. So those are some of the benefits of co-op. You get a wide variety, a lot of breadth and depth of experience within a specific industry. But if you're not sure what industry you want to go to or what company you want to work for, internships are a really great alternative to co-op that most of our students do. Only a select few of our students do co-op. And internships allow you to hop around different companies every summer and get a feel for lots of different industries. So that's kind of the main difference between internships and co-ops. The next thing I want to cover is how you guys got your study abroad, like experiences. Was it easy to find? Were there limited options? What was your experience with that, and what drew you to the countries that you guys went to? So let's start with you.
So for me, doing the GEARE program, I had kind of a lot of help through the Office of Professional Practices, but also study abroad office that we have on campus as well. There are a ton of study abroad opportunities for engineering, but also just Purdue in general. So you, like Courtney and Paul did, they did 2-week study abroads. You can also do month-long ones over the summer, and like I did a full semester. So I actually had help through study abroad because I didn't want to do an engineering study abroad. They showed me to IES Paris, which is what I ended up going to, because I knew going into college that I wanted to be in France. There's not a lot of opportunities for civil engineering specifically in France, so I gravitated towards just learning more about the French language, which is why I went to Paris specifically. So as far as that goes, getting a visa and everything like that, the study abroad office definitely helps. They point you in the right direction, kind of where to go, what to do. So Purdue really helps you with that. And you can also often find some kind of like funding within Purdue or outside for study abroad as well.
So for my 2 study abroad experiences, I found them through advertisements in civil engineering. So they put up advertisements via posters throughout the building. They also have them on the computer screens when you log in. And they send out emails too to let you know about them. So both of mine were through civil engineering. So I found out about them through those various means.
Nice. And then one of you has done GEARE or is in
Yes.
the process of GEARE.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about what GEARE overall is?
Right. So GEARE, when I started it, so I'm a 5th-year senior right now, but when I started GEARE, and I think it's still basically the same idea, is you do a study abroad for a semester, you work abroad for a semester or a summer, and you also take 12 language credits while you're here. So when you're an engineer at Purdue, you don't have to take any language credits, but GEARE kind of amplifies that and kind of makes sure that you're a well-rounded global student when you're here. So you actually end up with a global engineering studies minor when you finish GEARE at the end. So that's kind of also one of the big reasons why I chose Purdue, was because of the GEARE program and the emphasis on global engineering. So GEARE, there's also a few classes that you take going through your time here, especially freshman, sophomore, and junior year. Being senior and super senior, I don't really have those classes anymore. But you also, at the end, when you come back from your study abroad, you do a global design project. And sometimes it can be through our EPICS program here at Purdue, or it can be on your own, community service projects, anything like that.
Nice. GEARE is definitely something very unique to Purdue. We don't know of any other universities out there that have this comprehensive program where you get foreign language study, 2 semesters abroad, one of them doing a study abroad, the other doing an internship abroad. You can also just do international research if you'd rather, if you don't want to do the internship abroad. So there's a lot of flexibility in that, but then also doing the global design project, getting that global engineering studies minor. You can also pretty easily minor in the foreign language too, if you choose, especially if you're bringing in credit from high school. And so it's all neatly wrapped into a single package, and it's still 4 years to graduate. and there's really no additional cost. When you're off studying abroad, you just pay Purdue tuition, which you would have done if you were on campus anyway, and the local room and board, which sometimes can be cheaper than what it is here. And so it's really neat to get all these additional experiences, be a really well-rounded global engineer, and still 4 years. So basically for the same time and money as a traditional 4-year engineering student. So it's a very, very cool program. I've talked to several students that GEARE was one of the kind of the tipping factors that brought them to Purdue because of that opportunity that you really just can't get anywhere else. So we've had some questions already about internships and co-ops. Are they paid? Are they both paid? Yes. Internships and co-ops are both paid. It is all paid. All the work experience you'll get in engineering is paid. Yep. That's one of the great benefits of being an engineering student. They both pay pretty similarly, respective to each other. Internships and co-ops pay about the same. It obviously just depends on your employer, your location, but definitely pays and pays really well. It is a great way to help pay for school. So for in-state students, it really helps a ton. For out-of-state, every little bit helps, right? And these really help chip away at that high tuition bills by getting these experiences. So how did you guys get your respective work experiences? What was your favorite part about what you've done so far in your different internships?
Sure, yeah. So I had mentioned I had internship experience. So what I did this past summer was I worked in Indianapolis. I worked for an engineering firm that did building control systems. They did architectural engineering. They did electrical engineering. So I was specifically in the architectural engineering department. So what I did was I did HVAC, which is like ductwork, and plumbing design for a lot of different buildings throughout Indiana. So that experience in itself was awesome. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But how I found it, Teddy had alluded to this a little bit earlier, but Purdue offers a lot of awesome resources to connect with employers on campus. So something that you'll see a lot is career fairs here. So the biggest career fair that we have is called Industrial Roundtable. So that happens in September. It's a 2-day event. We have over 200 companies come over those 2 days, recruiting all types of different majors. So it's not specific to engineering, but they do recruit basically every single type of engineering major while there. And that's really awesome to get some exposure in that face-to-face interaction with recruiters, get your name out there, learn more about what some of these companies are doing, and then really get to give your credentials to somebody in more of an intimate environment than just applying online. So specifically how I got my internship, so civil engineering actually has its own career fair that it does. It does it in October. This past year we had actually 116 companies come, recruiting specifically civil engineers for internship and full-time opportunities. So that was a really awesome opportunity that civil engineering puts on for its students to bring in a lot of companies that are very focused on just Purdue civil engineering students. We also have some construction management students and some environmental engineering students that like to come to that too. So they release the packet of all the companies coming before they come. So there's a link to their website. You can go check out what they do, some of the projects they've worked on, the different opportunities available with them. So you can kind of narrow down a shorter list of employers you might want to look at while you go to the career fair, who you want to go talk to. So that's what I had done. And I had an awesome conversation with one of the companies that I then ended up working for. So talked to them at the career fair. Within a few days, they had emailed me back saying, we enjoyed talking to you. Would you be willing to come to our office, which is, like I said, in Indianapolis for an interview? So I went, I think it was a weekday, I think on a Thursday, and just drove down to Indianapolis to do an on-site interview with them. It went really well, and then I got a job offer a few weeks later. So it was that was a pretty straightforward process. Sometimes, you'll apply to, a lot more places. Obviously, I talked to more companies than that, had interviewed with a few other companies. So it just kind of depends, how many companies you want to talk to, how many might be interested. It kind of depends year by year. But yeah, it's really nice that Purdue provides those opportunities for their students. And then there's other opportunities too, and other majors put on their specific career fairs also. And then there are more general career fairs too. We have another big one, typically either at the end of January or early February. It's called Expo, and it's kind of mirrors Industrial Roundtable a little bit. It's a little bit smaller, one-day event, but still just a ton of employers from recruiting all different types of majors coming to campus, trying to give internship and full-time experiences to Purdue students.
Yeah, so kind of like Paul mentioned, I got my co-op actually at Expo. So Expo has about 150 companies come. So I got that second semester of my freshman year, so just went up kind of like you, talked to them, gave them my resume, talked to them about my experiences and stuff, and they interviewed me on campus, and I got the job I then got a job at John Deere, so I worked at John Deere last summer as a manufacturing design engineer. I actually got that online, so I applied online, and then a few weeks later I got an email saying, we want to phone interview you, and then they brought me in for an in-person interview, which was pretty neat. And then next summer I'm going to be working for Boeing in Seattle, and I got that through Industrial Roundtable, which has about 385 companies come every year. I think there's over, there's I think there's 1,700 unique employers who come to Purdue every year looking to hire Purdue students. But that was a pretty unique experience. I went to an information session the day before, made a connection with one of the employees who worked there. We talked for probably 15 minutes after the information session, and then went there the next day and actually spoke to her again, and then got an interview on campus, and then found out actually 45 minutes after my interview that I had a job. A lot of companies now are starting to do what's called like the accelerated hiring initiative, where they want Purdue engineers. They don't want other companies to get those Purdue engineers that they want, so they'll give you offers really soon. So I left my interview. I was the last one of the day. It was about 4:15, left my interview, got a call at 5 saying, congrats, we have a job for you, come to this networking event. So got that experience in early September, and it's kind of nice because I'm not sitting here wondering about where I'm going to be working next summer. I've known since literally the first month of school. So I think that was pretty unique, and these companies come here to hire Purdue engineers and do things like that for Purdue engineers, which I think is pretty unique.
Yeah, we have a fantastic relationship with employers all around the world, and as well as just a great name recognition. A lot of employers love to come here to recruit Purdue engineering students specifically. I've known companies that will start here before they'll open up positions elsewhere to other university students. So it's just really cool to see that the quality of students that we produce, that the companies know, and they're always here seeking out our students. One other kind of career fair that wasn't mentioned was for co-op specifically. We have, it's called Professional Practice Days. It actually just happened, I think, a week or two ago. It's a 3-day event. Students that are interested in doing the co-op process will sign into the co-op database. We've got a co-op student database where they'll sign up for that account. They can upload the resume, and then that resume, with their approval, is sent out to employers, co-op employers. But then also, in preparation for Professional Practice Days in January, students will select companies that they want to interview with. So the companies that are coming, basically, many of them will have Purdue fill their interview schedules for them. And so our students go in and rank them in priority who they want to interview with. And then afterwards, an algorithm runs that pairs students with employers. You're guaranteed at least 3 interviews. And then Professional Practice Days rolls around in February. And the first day is a career fair, a little networking event. I think this year they really focused on some startups. And so you can get some additional interviews just through that. But then the second and third day are interview days where they take place in the ballrooms in our union. And it's literally like speed dating. It's really fascinating to watch. It's 30-minute time slots, and every half hour there's a bell that rings telling you it's time to get up and go to your next interview. It's a really interesting process, but we had just over 1,000 interviews took place specifically for co-op positions over those 2 days. It's a really cool opportunity for those that do want to get involved in co-op. But we do have students like Teddy that will get their co-op experiences through Industrial Roundtable or Expo, or even just applying to positions online. So there's a variety of ways of getting co-op, but that's probably, though, the Professional Practice Day is one of the best ways to kind of get in front of these employers that are hiring specifically for co-ops. But overall, Purdue and the various organizations that are running these career fairs do a great job of, ahead of time, letting the students know who's going to be here, what majors they're recruiting for, even what year of student they're recruiting for, as well as visas. So for international students, they're able to see very quickly which ones are hiring, the different student visas that you might be on when you're here too. And so you can put together your list, and then pro tip here, research the companies before you go and talk to them. And you can have the time to do that all ahead of time, because it's even a week out, and sometimes even longer than that. You can see who all is coming. And so you can have your list, research them, and be ready to go the day of the career fair and go and chat with them and talk to them about why you want to work for them, what really got them on your radar. But one of the things that I always found interesting about our career fairs is a lot of times when you're going around, it's less of you trying to convince the company to hire you and more of the companies trying to convince you to apply for their jobs or to work for them, because our students are so sought after, which is really cool.
And I would like to say, so a lot of your interviews are actually going to be more behavioral than technical. So for freshmen coming in, I think it's important to note that you can get internships, because most of your interviews are going to be more about who you are as a person, how you would fit in like a company's culture, and less about kind of what you can do. Because I think they understand that a freshman might not have a lot of technical skills, but every interview I've ever had has been behavioral, which I think has worked out better for me. So,
Yeah, and with the 5-session co-op program, your only opportunity to apply is your freshman year because you've got to be off campus for 5 semesters. So you apply your freshman year, your first session would be that summer or the fall of your sophomore year. And so it's all freshmen applying for these positions. And so obviously nobody really has a lot of like in-depth experience yet. And the employers though actually really like that. It makes you very malleable. They can kind of build you to the engineer that they're looking for, and they don't have to worry about like, you know, retraining you from any like habits from another employer. It also works in your favor because you don't have to worry about upperclassmen competing against them for the same job. And so it's really neat. It's balanced between internships and co-ops. There's only so many students looking for co-ops, and there's only so many jobs. Then there's only so many students looking for internships, and there's the internship jobs. So it's like separate cohorts essentially that are applying for things too. So that makes it really easier for both parties. We also had a question on where was it? How difficult is it to get co-ops? Is it difficult for that? Is it difficult to internships? And kind of going back to that, it's like I wouldn't say it's difficult. There are a lot of opportunities there. It's just a matter of doing your homework on the companies, taking advantage of all the resources on campus that we have to help you get ready so that you can ace the interview and get the job. Right. The other thing you need to do too is just getting involved on campus in something. It doesn't have to be a lot of things, but you know, getting involved in some sort of club or activity to show involvement, to show initiative, to show time management. So it's more of just the things on your end that you have to do because there are a lot of opportunities out there. I've got 3 civil engineering students on here, and they are always looking for civil engineering students. We have a shortage of civil engineers too. So it's definitely easy, but somebody want to talk about like CCO and some of the different opportunities for like getting ready for interviews? Anybody used the CCO before?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I haven't specifically used it, but I know that they have resume peer reviews every, I think before Expo and IR every year, so the big career fairs, they have peer resume reviews, and they also have interview prep nights where they'll help you with your interview skills, especially if you've never done an interview before. Coming in as a freshman, it's super helpful. They also actually have interview attire that you can borrow from them. If you come to, especially as a freshman, and you don't have any interview attire, you can borrow it from them at their office. Those are some of the ones that I know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can talk to one of the resume reviews. I think they call them resume blitzes, but they'll have them before the big career fairs. And yeah, it's just like the Center for Career Opportunities, the CCO, they'll have staff on board, they'll have other people helping out that have experience working with critiquing resumes and making sure that yours looks good for when employers are going to be looking at it, and making sure that they're taking you seriously when you're trying to apply for their jobs and talk to them in person. So I did go to one of those, which is really nice. I went to one of those as a freshman preparing for IR, so it was really my first experience going to talk to some recruiters, going to talk to employers, and I wanted to make sure that my resume looked professional. So it was really nice. I walked in there. I kind of did my best on the first run through, but they had a ton of awesome suggestions on what employers often look at and what I should focus on in my resume. So it was really easy to make those switches and put together a really nice looking resume by the end of it. But yeah, like Cece had said, Center for Career Opportunities has a lot of really nice other programs too for anything that you might need. I think like she said, they have practice or interview prep. I think they do a mock career fair at some point throughout the year too, where it's kind of simulates going through, talking to employers, practicing your elevator pitch. So basically the entire range of activities that you might be needing practice in when networking with employers and looking for an internship or a co-op experience, they can help you out with there.
Yeah, they offer every day of the week. They have walk-ins for resume critiques. I used that several times when I was a student. I guess I never mentioned I'm a Purdue alum myself. I went to the CCO several times to go over my resume with me, especially helpful as a freshman. And whenever you don't really have a lot of experience, and a lot of employers don't really care what you did in high school, so how can I put together a resume? Well, CCO can help with that very easily. They've often been ranked as one of the top career service centers for a college campus. They do, sometimes before some of these big career fairs, they'll do mock interviews that you can sign up for, but your mock interview is actually with an actual recruiter from a random company that you won't know ahead of time. And so it's really neat. You get like these fake interviews, but with real actual recruiters. And sometimes those themselves can lead to actual interviews, but it's just really great that you get this feedback straight from the source of the people that you would be interviewing with. So they do a really great job, and they have a lot of things that are available every day. But then leading up to all the career fairs, they'll also do workshops around campus too. So lots of opportunities, and so it really just is important that you take advantage of them. Don't, it's free. All it costs is your time. You know, there are people out there for after you graduate that charge a lot of money to those sorts of things. So you might as well take advantage of while you're a student. And then if you graduate from Purdue, you can actually use the CCO's resources free for the rest of your life. So if I ever decided I want a career change, I can go and use their resources as well.
Good to know.
Yeah, alumni can use the CCO too. So lots of resources for getting that. So going back to, is it hard to get co-ops or internships? It really varies. You know, some disciplines might be a little bit more competitive than others, but again, as long as you take advantage of resources, you're getting involved on campus in some sort of fashion. Again, it doesn't have to be a lot of involvement, but just something to show employers, like what you've done and your work ethic, because that's more important these days is, you know, your work ethic. Can you fit in the organization? Which is another reason I think our students are so well prepared, is we really focus on, you know, collaborative kind of coworker-like environment rather than a competitive environment.
Just to hop in on one thing, I think obviously like different jobs are more competitive depending on what company it is, what major it is, but the thing that's going to help you out the most, obviously using all the resources available to you, but really it's just doing your homework before you go and talk to them. You know, they're going to release a list of all the employers that are going to be at these different career fairs and these different events before, you know, you actually get there. So you can go onto the websites, go see what projects they're working on, go see what, you know, what people say about their company culture, go see what locations, you know, they have available. Do some of that homework so that you have something to talk to those employers and recruiters about when you go in and maybe do an interview or you're just talking to them at a career fair or something like that. That goes a long way, just doing, you know, 10 to 15 minutes of homework. So you have something and it shows that, you know, you care about their company, you care about the job that you're interviewing for. You're not just talking to them for the sake of just talking to them. Employers really care that, you know, you're going to put in the effort and you're going to take some agency over, you know, this opportunity that they're going to be providing you. So definitely just doing your homework beforehand can go a really long way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few more questions about internships, co-ops. How does housing work for co-ops? So that's a pretty quick one. Basically, if you're living on campus in the dorms, since the co-op program is an academic program at Purdue, you're able to break your contract after one semester. So you don't have to worry about any repercussions or penalties for if you're here in the fall, then you go on co-op in the spring. If you're living off campus in apartments, those are generally 12-month leases, and so you just need to find somebody to sublease while you're gone. There's actually a student organization of co-op students at Purdue. And so they actually, usually they'll work together saying, you know, I'm coming back to campus. Oh, hey, I'm leaving. Can you take over my apartment? And so you can kind of find it that way, but there's also all sorts of apartment listings out there for subleasing and that sort of a thing. And so it's a little bit more like work on your part, but it's still pretty doable. There's almost always people looking for housing or looking to take over their housing. So that's really not a huge issue. But how about housing? So we have another question too, like where are these internships and co-op experiences? The answer is everywhere, like everywhere.
Yeah, really.
And then so how does housing work too with that? So do you guys want to talk about like any of you guys have internships too?
Yeah, I've had 3.
You've had 3?
Yeah, 3.
You've had some as well? So if you guys want to talk about like where your internships have been and then how housing worked wherever you were.
Yeah. You want to take it, Courtney?
Sure. So I've had 3 internships. My first one was in Germantown, Maryland. So I'm from Columbia, Maryland, which is about a 30-minute drive from Germantown. So I actually just stayed at home that summer, which was pretty nice. And then I would just commute to work every day. Then my next summer, I was actually lucky enough to get one in Fort Meade, Maryland. So I was also, again, able to live at home. And then last summer, I lived in Chicago. So for that one, I was not able to live at home. So I did have to find some housing. So what I ended up doing was living at a university in downtown Chicago inside the Loop, which worked out really well because then I could get a 3-month lease for the time that I was actually going to be there. I didn't have to sublease from somebody. And I was also living with all other people that were interning in Chicago for the summer, which was nice. It was kind of like being in university housing again. And I really liked that I could walk to work too. It was just a 10-minute walk to my office.
Nice.
So my co-op was in LaPorte, Indiana, which is kind of near South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame, if you know that place. So for that, I found a 4-month lease, just worked with a leasing agency. Their work always co-ops coming through my facilities. So, you know, they kind of had a partnership with one of the companies in the area. So I just found a 4-month lease, and then once I left, it was over. And they were pretty flexible with move in and move out dates and that kind of stuff. My second internship was in Moline, Illinois, which is right across the river from Bettendorf, Iowa. So which is where I live. So I just lived at home for that summer, but I had the option to live with other interns. So there was about 150 or 200 interns in the Quad Cities at that time. So I could have lived at a university, which I think is pretty common. And then next summer, I'll be in Seattle, which is, you know, the housing market there is a little difficult. So Boeing sponsors housing for all of its interns. So we're all going to live in like furnished apartments in kind of varying places depending on where we're working. But that's been really painless, I think. It's nice not to have to worry about moving to a big city and finding housing that I think would be otherwise pretty expensive, and they comp most of it, so I still have to pay a little bit, but overall it's going to be a lot less expensive than it would have been.
Nice. For sure. So my first internship after my freshman year was just in Valparaiso, so it's 30 minutes from my hometown, which is Crown Point, Indiana. So I just lived at home. This past summer I was in Indianapolis, so my company actually gave me a housing stipend and fully paid for my housing, which is really nice. So I had a lot of autonomy in where I lived. So my office that I worked in was downtown. So I got I subleased an apartment from one of my friends that goes to the university there. Oh my God, it's so many words. Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis.
Oh yeah.
Is the full name of it,
Yeah.
IUPUI, if you're familiar with it. But he was a student there. Obviously, he wasn't going to be there for the summer, so I just got to sublease from him. So that was just an apartment right downtown, which is really nice too. So it kind of depends on the company whether or not they're going to pay for your housing. Generally, what happened in my internship was your hourly rate was a little bit higher if you didn't have a housing stipend. So some of the people I worked with, their hourly rate was a little bit higher, but I still got paid really well. And then also got my housing paid for. So it made it really attainable to go somewhere else other than my hometown to do an internship.
I had a pretty drastically different experience than all of them. I've lived in Florida for the past 3 summers with 2 different companies actually. Twice in Fort Lauderdale, which as you can imagine isn't the cheapest place to live housing-wise. But my first internship I had a stipend, a monthly stipend that helped offset, entirely offset the cost for my living. And the last 2 summers I've had a per diem since I've worked on a construction site. And so I get a daily kind of stipend that's not taxed that helps towards my housing, food, and things like that. So all 3 summers I've actually lived alone in things that I found through Airbnb or VRBO. So houses, condos, things of the like. So I've lived alone in 2 different houses in Florida and then a condo 1 summer.
I never would have thought of using Airbnb for.
You can, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's not something I think. That's yeah. I'm old, but I'm not that old. But I should know more about Airbnb.
Yeah.
Nice. So did any of you guys? I think you mentioned your employer paid for your housing for one of them. Did anybody else have your employer pay
Mine was
for
paid
housing?
for as well.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where many employers do, some employers don't, but usually at the very least they will include that in your pay. They'll give you an additional pay to help with housing. It may not be actually directly paying for your housing themselves, but they're going to pay you a really good wage to where you can afford cost of living and still, make bank to put towards your future schooling.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say they always take into account the cost of living of wherever you're going to. Like you mentioned Seattle, like Fort Lauderdale for me, it's very different from being in the middle of nowhere, Indiana maybe. But anything like that, they'll take into the cost of living for whatever city you're going to as well.
Yeah. So for those that are curious, what kind of internship opportunities there are, what kind of co-op opportunities there are, if you Google Purdue Industrial Roundtable, you can find the website and see all the companies that came this last year, where they're at, what kind of majors they recruited for. That's not like a login portal or anything. Anyone can access it. Just kind of get a feel for the companies that come. And then for co-op, if you go to, it's the Office of Professional Practice at Purdue that runs our co-op program. If you go to their website, it's opp.purdue.edu. I'm sure one of my students will paste that in the comments for you guys. But you can find on their website a list of all the co-op employers that have recruited students recently as well. So you can kind of see the mix and the opportunities. But they really are all over the place. We've got some great relationships in Silicon Valley, in New England area, and central US, southern Texas. Just anywhere you'd want to go, you can probably find some sort of opportunity to apply to. So we've talked a lot about internships and co-ops, talked a little bit about study abroad, but let's talk about research for a little bit. You obviously have some research experience. Anybody else have research?
I'm doing policy research, so it's not engineering, but it's kind of an interdisciplinary
So let's talk about this. Why policy research?
Sure. So specifically why I'm interested in policy is I think it's really important to make institutional change with how things are. So with engineers, I think kind of fundamental to what we like to do. Obviously, we like to apply math and science to solve problems. Something as a civil engineer that I think a lot of us have in common is that we like to build, we like to improve society, and we like to build for the public good. So it's just kind of an extension of that, kind of moving into more of the policy realm, also supplemented by my civil engineering education. So that's kind of why I choose to pursue the research in the policy realm. So a little bit about what I do. There is a civil engineering twist on it. I study the social and ethical implications of connected and automated vehicles. So that's a very new technology that's coming out and something that's being studied a lot in civil engineering and in other fields too. So right now we're looking at the different states that have big programs and are starting to roll out some of those projects. So Michigan, California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, those are just to name a few. Kind of looking at how they approach legislating for those different programs, how those programs are developing. Like, just for example, in Michigan, obviously that's kind of the automotive hub of the United States. So there's a big push by industry there to kind of advance that technology. So it's interesting to see how the legislation catches up with that. So it's been cool to do that research, working on an interdisciplinary team. So I work on a research group. There's a political science major, there's a neuroscience major, she's going to med school, a multidisciplinary engineering major. I think one's in nuclear, I want to say, engineering. So, I mean, we have people coming from all different types, and that also gives me a really well-rounded experience there, kind of seeing how they approach problems and look at problems a little bit differently based on, what their interests are and what they've studied in the past. But it's also really cool because I'm in a transportation engineering class right now, so I see kind of some of those different concepts that I can apply from my engineering classes to the policy realm and vice versa. And it really gives you kind of a deeper understanding, and I think helps you think about the bigger picture of what you're learning in your courses when you get to do an interdisciplinary research experience like that.
Cecilia, what all have you done research-wise?
All right. Well, there's a lot of different ways to do research, and what I'm doing is paid undergraduate research. So I started last semester, actually, and I do research through the National Science Foundation, so they actually fund me, and I get a monthly stipend instead of an hourly pay that a lot of research does. Whether you get credit or hourly pay, that's kind of up to you normally. So I get a monthly stipend through National Science Foundation, and I do research, as I said earlier, in Bowen Laboratory here. So it's a large-scale lab for civil engineering design, and I do research with geotechnical. So mine's a little more mundane than that. It has to do with piles in sand foundations. A lot of it has to do with bridges, building bridges over waterways, things like that, and how driving the piles into the ground affects the sand below it. A lot of it hasn't been studied before. For me being civil, it seems kind of obvious that it needed to be studied, but that's kind of the research that I've been doing.
Bowen Lab is really cool.
Yeah.
It is
I've
awesome.
been in there several times.
Yeah.
We also have a newer kind of affiliated research campus that I'm forgetting the name of, is where they have a lot of retired bridges that have like failed over the years.
Oh,
The
I just read
Esprite
about
Center?
this.
It's the, huh?
Esprite?
Yeah, Esprite.
Yeah.
It's basically like the bridge graveyard. And so you can go out there and they'll take classes out there to analyze, kind of forensic analysis of these failed bridges.
Yeah.
And one of the specimens they have is from the bridge collapse in what was it, Minnesota, I want to say, from several years ago. Your parents would probably know, any parents that are watching, but there's a bridge collapse in Minnesota. That's really all. And they actually we're the only university that has a specimen. And so students are able to go there and analyze it. We do a lot of research on these structures to see, we've got some bridges out there that are decades old, and so we're able to analyze then how have these things fatigued, stress over time. So that's really cool. But Bowen itself, it is one of the largest, if not the largest, civil engineering research labs in the country. And they do lots of really cool research in there on a full-size scale.
Right.
And most of it's just breaking stuff for a lot of what they do.
Yeah.
They've done like bridge spans in there where they'll just put stress over it for like 5-year long study to see how it breaks down over time. I was there one time, they had, I think it was foundations from skyscrapers. They were putting lateral stress on it. The day after I was there, it was going to actually like burst out the sides. This long concrete slab was going to like explode out the side.
There's a lot of concrete in Bowen.
Yeah, and so they were able to kind of analyze what happened right before the failure. So all these things to like see how our infrastructure crumbles around us, both just over long-term use and in natural disasters, so we can know what to look for as our civil engineers are analyzing and inspecting it, and then know how to fix it too and prevent these massive failures. There was one time they were shooting projectiles at reinforced concrete walls down in the basement, and that was to make sure that our nuclear reactor vessels can be bomb-proof. They're reconstructing the aftermath of the Fukushima reactor incident, where after the reactor had breached and the containment vessel was put under high heat, there were aftershocks that were happening, and so that caused the vessel eventually breached and released radiation to the atmosphere. So what they did for this is they took the concrete containment, a replica of the concrete containment vessel, strapped some heaters onto all the sides of it, heated it up, and attached it to the strong wall to simulate the aftershocks to see how that high heat affected the integrity of the concrete. So all sorts of like really cool stuff that goes on in Bowen Lab. So there are a lot of opportunities for research at Purdue. We have over, I think it's 2,000 undergraduate research projects every single year that our students are involved in across all majors. As Paul represents, you can do research outside of your major, follow a side passion or a passion that kind of like dovetails with your major, or you can stick with your major. It's totally up to you. There's internship or research during the school year. There's some during the summer as well, and a whole variety of options. Go ahead.
Sorry, research is actually like pretty easy to get, I think, as a whole. I think kind of as a general rule, there's going to be more openings than there are like people interested in them, and you just have to kind of find that professor. So my dynamics professor did weapons research for the DoD on triggering explosives with vibration. So he's working on that. It's like really top secret stuff. But he told us in class, he's like, I have 10 openings, apply. Every professor here does research, in some form or another, and there's a database out there of every research project going on. So you guys, like, if you come to Purdue, you can go like scroll down the list and find one that interests you, and then it's as easy as sending an email to the professor and setting up some time to chat. So it's definitely very, I think, easy to get involved in. And if you want to do grad school, then research is key.
Yeah, somebody had asked about resources for aeronautical and astronautical engineering. We don't have any aero-astro students with us tonight, but I will say they were asking about labs, research labs. A lot. In this building that we're in Armstrong Hall. It's where Aeronautical and Astronautical is actually headquartered, and they're up on the 3rd floor. But they've got some wind tunnels in here, some miniature wind tunnels that are subsonic and supersonic. We've got a larger wind tunnel out at the airport, actually a couple out there. But the coolest one of all, we've got the premier propulsion lab in the country, if not the world, Zucrow Labs. Z-U-C-R-O-W. It is honestly, I think it's like, I forget the exact term, is it the largest or?
It's the premier one
in the
country.
In the country. It is no one else in the US, and I think hardly anyone else in the university in the world can do what we do at this lab. They do propellant research, so all the fuels for rockets, as well as the rockets themselves and firing them. We can fire up to, I think, at least 3 or 4 cells at a time now. Most rockets are multiple rocket engines, but we can fire like 4 at a time, all grouped together. And so it's really cool. It's out on the far edge of campus next to our airport, so that way if anything does go boom unexpectedly, it's far away. But it's the oldest in the country. It was found in the 50s. We never had any incidents, at least not that have been made public anyway. So it's a really cool lab, especially for those that are interested in propulsion or propellant research. Zucrow Labs is unparalleled for that as well. We have a lot of really cutting edge labs across campus. We're an R1 research institution, which means we do a lot of research. We had almost $500 million in research expenditures at Purdue last year. Of that, almost half of that was engineering. It was around $220, I think, million in sponsored research in engineering at Purdue. So we're always looking for more students to get involved in the research. Our professors are always looking for help. We even have a kind of a career fair for research. It's called Research Roundtable. And professors set up shop. They set up booths about their research. And so you just go and you mingle, and it's just like a career fair, but you're talking with the different professors and their research and seeing which ones you might want to work in. So there's lots of ways to get involved in research and involved in internships and co-ops. So let's now move on to study abroad a little bit. We've talked about that to some extent. One of the questions is, when studying abroad, would I be paying in-state or out-of-state tuition? Generally, and this is usually listed on the study abroad, like a specific program site, it'll tell you what your tuition is going to be. A lot of times it's Purdue tuition, and you'll just pay, if you're in-state or out-of-state, you're going to pay whatever your classification is. Some of them are just a flat fee. Some of them have an additional fee, but we really try, obviously, for most of them to be just straight up Purdue tuition. But it really varies from program to program. Are these opportunities at Purdue equally available to international students? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was just talking with the assistant director for global programs in our Office of Professional Practice, and he was talking about how they actually help international students find internships and research in their home countries or countries nearby as well. So if they want to go back home over the summer and still get an internship experience, they will help them find opportunities. We'll also help them with the logistics as needed too. So we also have the ISS, International Students and Scholars Office, and they help with a lot of the logistics for visas, for finding employment, all of the forms and things that you'll need to know. So they're also really helpful for international students too. So yeah, if you're an international student tuning in, don't think any of this doesn't apply to you. All of this really does. Certainly, the opportunities for internships and co-ops are a little bit more limited. Not every employer is able to hire students on visas, but there are certainly a lot that do. And like I said earlier, before these career fairs, we almost always list like the employers and what visas they're able to hire for too. So you're going to know right off the bat. So there are so many resources on campus though to help international students find these opportunities, and they definitely are out there too. Let's see, what else for study abroad? Are international or domestic students, they have the same chance to be admitted to these programs? Yeah, absolutely. We're not discriminatory, anything like that. Definitely don't worry about that. I mean, it's the opportunities are there, and it's pretty well open for everyone. All right, so let's see. What other questions do we have? I've seen it pop up a few times about financial aid. I want to touch on this real quick because I see that popping up in the chat a few times. All financial aid packages for those that applied by the March 15th. Well, let's see. I guess it's not even happened yet, has it? So financial aid packages have been released for those who met the January 1st deadline for FAFSA. The priority deadline is March 15th to file the FAFSA to get student aid. You can file as late as, I want to say it's like April something for the state of Indiana. But basically, for those that submitted by February 15th, financial aid packages have been released. If you file the FAFSA recently, since the 15th, you can expect to hear back in about 3 weeks. All merit scholarship decisions have been released. Those were released in January. Students that were given merit scholarships were notified by email and by physical letter. But you were able, if you go into the My Purdue portal, you should have received instructions by email for that. You can just search your email for My Purdue, all one word. But in the My Purdue portal, you'll just create an account to access that. You don't have to accept your admission to Purdue to access My Purdue. But you'll go to My Purdue and go to the financial tab, and it will show you any award that you received, both through scholarships, through financial aid, through the government, those sorts of things. International students are not eligible for the merit scholarships. They're generally ineligible for the FAFSA, except for there are some opportunities depending on your status. If you go to FAFSA.gov, it'll walk you through those sorts of things. So really for international students, it's when you get on campus that additional scholarship opportunities will open up. When you're admitted to your major, or when you're starting your major rather, your sophomore year, all of our engineering majors have scholarships for their students to apply to as well. And that's for all students as well. So I just don't want international students to lose hope that there's never going to be any financial opportunities. Internships and co-ops help a lot. Scholarships will open up as you get involved on campus. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities for all those things. So again, as a recap, all merit scholarships have been released. Financial aid packages have been released if you filed your FAFSA by February 15th. Otherwise, it'll be about 3 weeks after you file the FAFSA. We encourage everyone, all domestic families, to file the FAFSA. Even if you don't expect to receive any aid because of your family income, that's what makes you eligible, though, to take federal student loans if you want them, as well as some scholarships do want you to have a FAFSA on file, even if it's not necessarily need-based. So it is free. That's what it stands for, free application for federal student aid. It's free. All it costs is your time. It's pretty simple. We recommend everyone fill it out just in case, and to also just keep that flexibility for future scholarship or financial aid opportunities, to go ahead and fill out the FAFSA. We just recommend it for everyone. I usually have to fight with some families on that. It's like, it doesn't cost you anything, just do it. You never know. So that's my little spiel on financial aid. But do you guys have any chiming in on scholarships, paying for college, anything you guys want to mention?
So for Civil, there's a bunch of scholarships that Civil has for us, and they make it really easy for us to apply. There's just one application. There's a couple questions, like essay style questions you'll fill out, and then different information about you. And then you submit it. Honestly, it really only takes 30 minutes, and then you'll find out at the end of the summer if you got any scholarships from that once you're into the School of Civil Engineering. So that's just one example of scholarship opportunities that become available as you enter your school.
And mechanical engineering is about $1 million that gives out every year in scholarships.
It's a good number.
So a lot of people that I know have benefited from those. I personally have as well. And definitely don't discount the effect that having an internship or a co-op can have on paying, because you're pretty much they're paying for most of your housing, so your only expense while you're on internship or co-op is your food, and you make a lot of money. Not having those expenses, I think, really helps offset it. and you know, I think they're all very well paid.
Yeah.
And definitely don't like discount that when you're looking at the cost of a college, because if you get a 5-session co-op, you know, you come out, like Ari said, with almost 2 years of work experience. So if you do that math, you know, you're making bank.
2 years of just under a professional engineer's salary, essentially, by the time you graduate. It's not bad.
And I mean, if you do the math, like you're starting at, you know, minimum probably $15 or $16 an hour, and internships can get up to like $40-ish an hour. So, you know, if you do that math, 2,000 hours a year, you know, you're making a lot of money. That can definitely help pay for college.
Anything to add? So I will say, when we surveyed the engineering students that graduated May 2017, it was around 90% of them reported having at least one internship by the time they graduated. The majority of them actually had 2 or more. And we had a 95% placement rate for our graduates from engineering within 6 months of graduating had been admitted to a grad school if they went that route, or were successfully placed with an employer. Most of our students, I would say, probably had their job lined up well before they even graduated. So our students are very successful post-graduation. Our average starting salary for engineering graduates was over $66,000. So there's a really good return on investment for engineering. So not only do you have the opportunity to get paid well as a student to help pay for college, but you're going to get a job, you're going to get a great job that pays really well after you graduate too. So even if you did have to take out some student loans along the way, you're able to pay them off pretty comfortably. Some other interesting stats that I can tell you is roughly 2/3 of our students from engineering graduated without any student loan debt. That's looking specifically at federal student loans. That's all we can track as a university, really. But 2/3 of our students that graduated had no federal student loan debt. That's really surprising. 2/3 of our students in engineering are out of state or international. So that really also kind of shows our students are able to help pay for it. Of those that did graduate with debt, the mean borrowed rate for out-of-state students was around $40,000 at the end when they graduated. That's less than 1 year's cost for being an out-of-state student, which is around $45,000 or so, what we estimate. For in-state students, the mean borrowed rate was around $20,000. Again, less than 1 year's cost. So they're graduating after 4 years with about 1 year's worth of debt. We have a new program that's for upperclassmen at Purdue called the Back of Boiler Program. It's an income share agreement. It's a new alternative to the federal student loans, where you get a loan of a certain amount, and then you just agree to pay back a small percentage of your salary for however a set number of years after you graduate. And there's a lot of protections with that, though. If you don't get a job for whatever reasons, you don't have to pay it back. And it's over a certain year, and if you go a year without a job, that counts, though, towards the number of years you have to repay. So, you know, many students may pay back less than what the loan was. Some students may pay back a little bit more, but it's always capped at a very small percentage. It's like a single-digit percentage of your income. So again, Purdue's just trying to find all these ways. We're in, I think, through 9 years now of frozen tuition for our students.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
So for the next year, maybe even 2 years, I can't remember exactly, but we've been freezing tuition for a long time. So we're finding all these ways to help our students afford it, to make it more accessible to pay for school, to find, you know, ways to get money, both free money and loans, for our students to be able to make it through, to get to that career at the end of it where you will get a great job and great salary. So I know for all of our out-of-state international students that are tuning in, that sticker shock value of 4 years of out-of-state tuition can be really overwhelming, but you know, most of our students don't pay that much because they're finding ways to help supplement all that through internships, through scholarships. Also getting involved on campus. There's a lot of scholarships out there in the different student organizations and clubs that we have on campus too.
Yep, definitely.
You know, I got some small scholarships by being involved in bands and orchestras. 1 year I actually got a full ride scholarship through the marching band. So there's all sorts of ways to help throughout all of it too. So finances are definitely something to consider, but you know, looking at that overall 4-year picture, that the 4 years of tuition, it's not always, you know, that mountainous of money that's going to be out of pocket. So it's my little spiel on financial aid and paying for school. We have a question about what qualifications are needed to be capable for handling research within a nuclear reactor, if you're a nuclear engineering student. I don't know specifically. We have a nuclear engineering student that works in our office, so if you want to email us, future-engineers@purdue.edu. Liz is a nuclear engineering student. She might be able to help with that. I do know one specific criteria, though, is that you have to be a U.S. citizen, a natural-born U.S. citizen. All countries are very protective of their nuclear research and usually only limit to their own citizens. So that I do know as far as that. Interestingly, we do have a research reactor on campus. one of few universities in the country that have a working nuclear reactor on their campus. It is a research reactor. It's not very powerful. It's like 1,000 watts, I think. It's not anywhere near like a power plant. But still, students are able to have a hands-on experience. We actually are the first fully digital instrumentation and control system for nuclear reactor in the entire country. We got the approval through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So we have like the most modern control systems for it, which is really cool for students that are in that field. I'm really interested in nuclear power myself. But then we're also able to do a lot of research with that for radioactivity research, materials research, those sorts of things. So for those of you interested in nuclear reactor power technology, we've got a great nuke program. There are, I believe, less than 100 students in our nuclear engineering program, so I like to call it the nuclear family. Sorry, that's terrible. Anyway, but yeah, but let's talk more generally about, qualifications for research. I mean, we kind of talked already of there's a lot of opportunities, and usually it's just a matter of talking to the professor. I mean, some of the ones that are funded by the government or funded by the military, those are going to have some more restriction on them, obviously. But that's just a small subset of our research. I would say the majority of the sponsored research for engineering was actually company sponsored. So, I mean, lots of opportunities for those sorts of things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways. I mean, so Cece had talked about how she gets paid for it through, a grant from the National Science Foundation. Some people do research for credit here too, so you can use it to count towards credit for your major if you set up a contract with your professor and do it that way instead of getting paid. And then, if you're in some of the first years of your college experience, maybe you don't really have the classes yet to maybe get a paid position at a research in a research team. Professors are oftentimes looking for volunteers in their lab too, and that can be a good chance to get exposed to the research process, and then also kind of just get your name out there, build a relationship with a professor, just in case you're interested in working on their team later on, maybe for pay or for credit, or to build connections with other people within the discipline too that they can refer you to.
Yeah, and so we have a question actually for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you found your policy research position?
Yeah, sure, I can talk about that. So my research, it's through something called the Purdue Policy Research Institute. So that is a program out of Discovery Park. So Discovery Park is essentially this relatively new area of campus. There's actually part of campus that's kind of in the southwest corner of it, where we're doing a lot of more cutting edge research. A lot of our newer facilities are there, and there's a very big focus on the global grand challenges. So a lot of the research that we're doing is kind of pushing us forward into solving some of those problems. So specifically how I found mine, one of my friends had actually done a fellowship with the Research Institute in the past, and so she, just from talking to her and hearing about her experiences in that, I was interested in it, so I had her forward me, the application process, just some tips about, what to look out for, what to think about when applying, and then just send in the application for it. So definitely keep your eyes open for when people are sending out emails with opportunities like that. There's posters around a lot too. And then if you're interested in something, just doing a search of, professors that might do something in that realm of interest. If, either they might have a research position open in their group for you, or they can recommend you to something that might be a closer fit to what you want to do.
Most of the websites for all of our majors, engineering and non-engineering, they usually have a research section on their website, and you can see like research by area. So you can find an area that you're interested in, you click on it, you'll see the different projects and what professors are working on them. And so you can just reach out to them.
Yeah.
We also have another question of like, how do you balance then doing research during the school year with your academics? I mean, have either you found that challenging to do, or how has that kind of panned out?
I think for me, actually, it kind of helps when I'm busier. I plan my day out better, so I kind of do research. Last semester, I had a heavier load in the afternoon for my classes, so I had to research in the morning. Maybe like 8 to 10, 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. About 10 to 12 hour weeks are pretty typical for research for civil in general. So that's kind of what I did. And then this semester I have more classes in the morning, so I kind of go to Bowen in the afternoon, probably around 1 or 2. And so it's often very flexible though with your professors. So you can work with them around your schedule. You can go in on the weekends too, after hours in the evenings. So a lot of it's kind of up to you, and sometimes the research position as well.
Yeah, I would say mine's a little less structured. I mean, obviously, a lot of times you can structure it how you want, but for me, a lot of it's more independent research based. So obviously we have meetings as a group, either weekly or bi-weekly, where we get together and talk about our findings, get help from others, get suggestions, and we're keeping up in group chats and things like that too. But for me, you don't necessarily have to be in like like an office or something like that. It's a lot of independent research. So it's kind of just more dependent on when I have time during the week. So obviously, like your schedule every semester, you're gonna have some larger open blocks of time. So just how my schedule shook out, like I'll have a lot of days I'll have like a 3-hour block between classes, so I'll just stay on campus and knock some out then too. So it's really just kind of having a little bit of foresight into when you're gonna have a little bit of extra time, and then especially just with like your coursework on top of that, you know, like sometimes you're gonna have heavier weeks, sometimes you're gonna have lighter weeks. So just kind of preparing yourself for that. If you know you have a heavier week coming up, either getting some more of that work done beforehand, or talking and communicating with your research professor and your research group to say, hey, I have a big week coming up. I might not be able to do as much now, and just kind of being proactive about either doing a little more work beforehand or a little more afterwards.
Nice. All right, we're already over an hour into this, which is crazy. I told you guys it goes pretty quick. So we also have some questions about things outside of these, so academics and that sort of thing. So let's talk about some of the academic things. One question is, what is the typical class size? That really varies from freshman through senior year. Your freshman year, you're going to have a lot of larger classes as you're taking the more general classes, like our general chemistry, physics, our calculus, 1 through 3. Those are still kind of larger lecture classes, so you might have a couple hundred students in your lecture. But for all those large lecture classes, we have what we call recitation, where these are meeting once or twice a week, depending on the class. They're required attendance, so you're required to go. And those are usually capped at 20 to 30 students. They're led by a graduate teaching assistant, and they basically go over the lecture material from the week. They'll kind of slow things back down. You'll often do some like group project or group team activities. Have the opportunity to ask more questions that maybe you couldn't ask in a larger lecture. And so that's our way to kind of slow back down, put you back in kind of more of a high school classroom setting, feeling, to make sure you don't feel overwhelmed by the large lectures. We also, all those large lectures are recorded, and you can go back and watch them after the fact if you missed something. So we try to offset that. It's just something that can't be avoided. Going to any large university, you're always going to have those larger classes. But typically, as you get deeper into your major, each year, your classes will often get a little smaller. Some of our smaller majors, though, like materials engineering, I know, for example, has a seminar class where once a week, all the students in the major, all 200 students, come together in a class once a week. So that's a large class, but it's a seminar class. It's 1 credit. It's just more so you get to know all your peers in your major, learn about opportunities and trends within your field. It's nothing like major academic. So I think the official number, like the average class size in engineering, do I have this? I don't remember. I want to say it's around 30 or so.
Yeah, I want to say like 32.
32, I think, students average per class in engineering. 87% of classes in engineering are taught by faculty, so almost anytime you're learning new material, it's going to be a professor. Typically, the only time your class is led by a TA, teaching assistant, is for maybe like a 100 level class, maybe some 200 level class, or those recitation classes. But otherwise, generally, like the whole like meat and potatoes, if you will, classes, like those are going to be taught by your faculty, by your professors. So I like to throw that stat out too. And then we also have an average student to faculty ratio of 20 to 1, so 20 students on average for every professor. I believe civil engineering, they were just talking, I think it's like 8 to 1 in civil engineering.
Yeah, we're
Nuke is like 0.8 to 1.
Yeah,
There's more faculty than there are students.
Yeah, I think there are more faculty than there are students. Industrial engineering also has a very low ratio. They just hired, they were telling me earlier today, I want to say it was like 37 new faculty over the last 5 years. All new positions too. So we really pride ourselves on, we're a large school. We've got around 9,000 undergraduate engineering students, but we're doing everything we can to make it feel as small as possible, to give you that one-on-one support, to engage with your professors. The College of Engineering, the Dean's Office, is actually encouraging our professors, and in some cases requiring them, to engage with the students, and so that you can have that kind of a mentorship role too. So, I mean, what are you guys' experiences with your class sizes? Have you ever felt really overwhelmed by the size? How did you cope with it if you did? What's been your general experiences with your classes?
So I'd say as I got into higher level of classes, the classes got even smaller. So in civil engineering, there's 9 different concentrations, which means there's 9 different ways that you can do civil engineering. So because of that, there will be really small classes. So for example, I'm an architectural civil engineer, so my classes for architectural civil engineering are only 8 people because it's a smaller track in civil engineering. So the higher you go in your classes, you'll end up with smaller classes.
Yeah, and I'm a mechanical engineer, so I'm in Purdue's single largest engineering major. Like EC is bigger than us, but that's 2 separate combined. And I'm from a small town in Iowa. Like I went to a pretty small high school, kind of in like the middle of a cornfield. But I've never felt, like intimidated by the class sizes or anything. I think the recitations that Ari talked about are really helpful. Also, there's like supplemental instruction sessions that you can go to. I felt it was like really, really manageable. And then, moving into my ME classes, like the largest they are is like 60 students. My labs are always about 15 or 20 students, and they're just going to continue getting smaller.
Yeah.
Similar thing.
Yeah, we're both in civil, but yeah, Courtney and I have been in classes of about 8 people. But also in civil, we have a class rate size of about like 90 or so. So often you'll have classes with all 90 of you. You get to know kind of everyone in civil going through. Especially in your sophomore and junior, you'll have those bigger classes, but then as you get into your senior year and you specialize, you'll be in those smaller classes.
Right. And something that's really nice, so even like your freshman year, obviously you're going to be in some of your bigger classes. Those might be kind of your intro, like calculus classes, physics classes, things like that. Those are going to be really big lectures, and Cece kind of alluded to it, but once you get into your actual engineering discipline, then you might have classes with, the rest of your class, some of those fundamental courses that everyone has to take. That might be 100+ students. Something that's really nice is for those common courses, there's going to be help rooms available for those too. So on top of supplemental instruction and recitations, help rooms are essentially just open like office hours where either graduate students or undergraduates that have done well in the class in the past are just there to help you out, especially with like homework questions. Your biggest resource here is honestly going to be your peers, so you're going to spend a lot of your time working in that collaborative environment, as I already talked about in the past. Working in that collaborative environment on a lot of homework problems, but sometimes you just need that extra help, and you like to hear kind of a different explanation about it rather than like what your peer said or like how your professor explained it. So it's really nice that we have that available too, to get that personal attention, that one-on-one attention, going through some of that course material to make sure that you don't fall behind, and if you ever need any extra help, then there's plenty of hours that you'll be able to make it and get that extra help.
Yeah. Man, I got totally sidetracked. I had something else to chime in on with that.
I'll come back to you.
But I mean, it's collaborative. So engineering, one of the biggest things that our students have to realize when they get here out of high school is college is totally different than high school. It's not as easy as high school, and engineering cannot be done on your own. It shouldn't be done on your own. You never want one person to design an entire bridge or an entire airplane. It really takes a whole lot of people because you can't be a master of everything.
Right.
And so one of the things that our students learn very quickly is that you really can't do it on your own, and you shouldn't do it on your own. So we have all these resources available to our students to get help in classes and help each other out. And we really foster that collaborative mentality where it doesn't even necessarily have to be an official like support thing, like the research, like the supplemental instruction or the help rooms. They're great, but if you are a little afraid to go to those things, it sounds a little daunting, you can just start by reaching out to your classmates. I mean, we try to like not foster any sort of competing against your classmates mentality. Instead, it's that collaborative. When you go to work in the workplace, you're going to be working with your coworkers. You're not competing against them. So it doesn't make sense to us to try to foster that competitive nature. And I think that's one of the coolest things about our program that sets us apart from some of the other top engineering schools out there. All of our students excelled in high school. You guys are all top of your class. You're used to being, on your own. But our students very quickly learn to work with each other. Whereas some of the other schools out there, it's a little bit more competitive feel to their atmosphere. And some students like that, and they'll thrive more in that. But I think for most students, the collaborative is better overall. And I just really appreciate that about our programs, that we really foster that friendly atmosphere, that Midwestern hospitality.
Totally.
If you've ever visited, or if you ever do come to visit, you'll probably get that sense of just how friendly. We get a lot of families that will comment on like, people are nice here. They like look at me and say hello. Like they make eye contact. It's weird. So we really do. I think it's one of the things that sets us apart. The other thing that really sets us apart is our first year engineering program. I've been seeing some of those things pop up in the question. So let's step back a second and talk about first year engineering. Sure. One, I think it's really funny that we have 3 civil engineers here all at once. But first year engineering is where all of our students started. So when you applied You applied to first year engineering. You also selected a major of engineering that you're interested in, but that was actually just for informational purposes, for statistical purposes, so we can kind of gauge where our students are interested in as far as majors go. It's non-binding. It has no impact on you as a student and what major in engineering you end up going into. So instead, everyone starts out in first year engineering, takes general courses that we'll talk about in a second, and then you won't choose your major until your second semester. Early on, typically February, is when you can go in and start choosing what major you want, but you can actually go in and change it all the way through like May 1st. So you have the whole first year to really explore all the 17 different engineering majors we have and determine which one's the right fit for you. And we find about half the students almost go into a different major than what they listed on their application. So, you know, you just never know what you're going to end up in. So, did any of you guys do honors?
Yeah.
You guys did?
We both
Cool.
did, yeah.
So let's talk about traditional first year engineering first, and how that looks. So who wants to talk about first year?
Sure. So first year engineering, when you take it, I guess, in the regular path, it's going to be a class that you have 131 in the first semester and then 132 in the second semester. So in the first semester, it's more about understanding the fundamentals of engineering and also understanding what you can do in the different disciplines in engineering, since there are so many of them. So you'll get an opportunity to talk to the different schools in engineering and learn about those different disciplines to help you decide what's best for you. So I know for me personally, I thought I wanted to do environmental and ecological when I came to Purdue, but after hearing the civil presentation, I realized civil was more what I was interested in. So then you'll go into 132, and 132 moves away from the career portion of it and is more into the engineering principles portion that you'll need for your future classes. So I think in the March area, you end up selecting your preferences in terms of disciplines in engineering that you would like to go into. And so that's probably the last you do of career design in terms of first engineering program. And then you're working on projects with teams. So you'll be in both semesters, you'll have a team of 4 that you'll be working with the whole semester. You'll have a different team in the second semester than you did in the first semester. But that will become your group that you're working with constantly. So even though that class can be a little bit bigger, you'll be working with those same 4 people all the time, so you won't really even notice how many people are in that class.
I think Courtney covered most of it. Honestly, it's been a long time since I took first year engineering.
It's been a while,
and
yeah.
it's changed a lot since I did take it. But like she said, you're working in a lot of teams, so you're constantly in different kind of projects that you're doing throughout your first semester and your second semester. And she kind of touched on this as well, but in your first semester, you'll get a presentation from every single engineering discipline kind of once a week. So there's 16 weeks. You'll have pretty much about that. Every week you'll have a professor, teaching assistants come in and talk about that engineering discipline. So you'll get a chance to ask questions. So if you have no idea about any of the engineering disciplines coming into Purdue, you'll learn all about them. And you'll get a chance to ask questions. And a lot of the disciplines will actually have host nights. So I know Civil hosted like a cinema night. Came, watched a movie, you can eat some popcorn and ask current civil engineering students any questions that you have about the major. So that's kind of a great resource for learning about the different disciplines.
Yeah, it's actually one of the recent changes in the first year. We've moved away from the in-class presentations from the majors, and now they've filmed like a video kind of module for each of the majors. And so you'll watch the videos online, you'll take a little quiz over to make sure like you're actually watching and getting all the details you should have. And the reason we've done that is to make it more accessible. We're also planning on eventually making that a public-facing portal, so even students still in high school can explore all the different majors.
That's awesome. But
also for consistency, because what we were seeing in a lot of these presentations is majors would come in, and it was more of why you should join our major because we're the coolest, and not so much of like, here's what you would do as a mechanical engineer, as a civil engineer. And so this way we're able to have structure to show kind of apples to apples comparisons between the majors of these are the research opportunities you'll do, here's the kind of the career tracks you can do in this major, and really get that more, similar flow between each of the videos to really compare between them. There's still the opportunities though to have in-person like appearances, hangouts with the different majors. We also have seminar classes or like 1 credit, 1 hour a week where you can sign up for different major classes and learn more about that major, an hour a week, learning from different faculty and students in these programs. So the whole goal of the first year program, when we're doing traditional or honors, which we'll talk about its difference in a second, regardless of which way you do it, the whole goal is to give you that exposure to all the different majors to make it a more informed decision, while also giving you the foundations of engineering skills that you'll need to be successful in the future. So teamworking skills, project management skills, learning that it's okay to fail. Some of your projects, you might fail in the project, but sometimes that's design. It's we're trying to show you it's okay to fail. That's how you learn, and you can't do it on your own either. So you're getting all these critical skills to be successful. It's also not a weed out program, no matter which way you do it. We have almost a 90% first year retention rate within the College of Engineering. So 89% of the students that started in fall 2017 were still in the College of Engineering in fall of 2018, their sophomore year. The national average around 75%, regardless of major. So we're above the national average, and we're engineering. It's not all, rainbows and lollipops. It is hard, but our students are able to be successful. In fact, they also had it's like a 3.23 or 3.21 average GPA at the end of the first year engineering program. So our students are doing well in their grades as well. And we have really great retention rates within the college and really great graduation rates for engineering. We're not trying to weed out any students. It's challenging, engineering's tough, but it's not impossible. And we're not trying to make it any harder than it should be necessarily, or at least not trying to make it impossible. So let's talk about honors first year engineering and how that's different. So you guys did honors?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how is that different from the traditional first year engineering?
Yeah, so you have a different first year engineering class. It's a little bit more project based, I think, as a whole than the normal track, I guess. You start out with kind of a team builder project, so like a mousetrap car, something like that. Then you move into an analysis based project. So I don't actually know. They've changed the class a little bit to become a little more physics based than ours is a little more computer science based. But regardless, it's some kind of analysis project where you look at something in the real world and you look at like different inputs into the systems. Like we did a bioprinter and we had to kind of like optimize with like print speed and temperature and all that kind of stuff like that to produce the optimal output organ. And then you finish up always with a robot project. So Purdue's honors program is partnered with the Harris Corporation, which is a Florida defense company. And they like kind of provide requirements. You basically have to design is it a Vex, NXT?
NXT.
Yeah, so it's an NXT robot that has to like follow a line, pick up some bins along the way, do different kind of challenges, and it's really fun. I think it's the same general format where you're working in a team of 3 or 4. You take a survey at the beginning of the year that kind of like assesses how much engineering you've done, and then you get put on a team that kind of like balances out your lot of experience or lack of experience, depending on which. But yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, for sure. So something that's a little bit different is just like credit hour wise. I believe 131, 132, which is the non-honors version, is 2 credit hours, if that's the same.
They're 2.
And then the honors version is, they might have bumped it to 4. When we took it, it was 3.5. It might still be 3.5, so I have a half credit, which people always ask me about. But so we do actually have, it's 3 days a week instead of the 2, which is the non-honors version is 2 days a week. So you're in class a little bit more. I think we just cover a little bit more material in the class. But like they had mentioned about the non-honors version, we're still covering the engineering design process, a lot of like teaming and like team management skills, project management skills. And that's really what our projects are kind of meant to teach is, one, how to work in a group. And that's kind of what that first project, mousetrap car, we built a straw tower, just shorter term projects, kind of get you acclimated to a team, kind of figure out like how you guys work together, when to meet up, how you guys are gonna like document your projects, things like that. And the robot project that Teddy talked to with the NXT, we built out the NXT Lego kits. That's actually normally assigned to you within the first I think it's assigned to you in week 3 or 4 of the semester, and you work on it basically the entire semester. So that really teaches you to manage your time, manage a project. And like Ari had talked about earlier, it kind of shows you how to fail. So we'll have a lot of, and it's a good thing too. So we'll have a lot of checkpoints throughout the semester. They're set up by the professors and the TAs within the course, and it's essentially just supposed to like kind of showcase what your robot can do and make sure that it can do the basic tasks that are necessary to like succeed in the final demonstration. So a lot of it's like iterating through different designs, kind of seeing what works. A lot of it's just going to be building, testing something out, and then if it works, great. If not, then how can you improve it? And it's really cool to see how everybody's ideas come together and how everybody kind of has different thoughts on how you should proceed. But it all kind of comes together in the end. So aside from just like the building process, there's also the coding process. So it's really cool to see how like people's different strengths and weaknesses can cover each other, and how you can learn from your other teammates too, moving forward. And I think something that's really kind of cool about the Purdue's first year engineering program, other than that it gives you a little bit of time to figure out what major is going to be best fit for you at Purdue, is the first year engineering program will put you on a team, and more than likely everybody's going to be either going into a different engineering discipline, or most of the people are going into a different engineering discipline than you are. So it's really cool to see kind of how their interests play into like their future plans and their future goals. And then also even just like past your freshman year. I mean, obviously you don't necessarily like forget your teammates from freshman year, so it's cool to have some connections in those other majors too. And like I mentioned earlier, the kind of interdisciplinary learning. I mean, we're all in engineering, but all the disciplines do things that are quite different from one another. So it's really cool to see how those can still fit together into a project and kind of see how that might apply to other projects too, and to pass just your first year engineering class.
It really gives you a unique perspective as an engineer, which employers also really value. You see how your field of engineering, how your specialty fits within the grander scheme of a project, and how your needs are different from the needs of an electrical engineer, and you also know their needs, and so you can kind of like make each other's life easier. It's something that a lot, like if students that started writing their major, they kind of miss out on that broader perspective of how they fit into the grand scheme of things, which is really unique too. Looks like you were saying something?
I think it's really important to have that time though to figure it out. Like I have 3 roommates. Paul's one of them actually.
That's true.
So when I came into college, I was like dead set on biomedical engineering. And I'm ultimately a mechanical engineer now. Like you started out in chemicals, switched to civil.
Yeah.
One of my roommates started out in biomedical, switched to nuclear, and the other started out in electrical and switched to computers. So it's like, a lot of people end up switching, and I think it's nice that Purdue doesn't expect us coming in to know what we want to do, because like chemical and civil are
very
polar
different.
opposite.
Very different.
Like
Yeah,
biomedical and nuclear are polar opposite.
Well, did they actually switch after you started, or did you just change your mind during?
Just change your mind.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry, not like actually switch, but.
Gotcha.
I mean, I know one of my best friends switched from industrial into mechanical, her first semester sophomore year.
Yeah.
So like, if you for some reason end up not liking which engineering major you go into, you can go to you can change. So.
I would say it happens less often than at other universities though, of switching major after you start in it, because you have that opportunity.
Because you have FYE,
but it's still a possibility. If you get into a major and you realize, I'm just not feeling this, you can absolutely change too. It happens. There's also a third way of doing first year engineering to make it even more complex. There's epics. Have any of you guys done epics?
I did an epics class
Do you want to talk about what
taking engineering 132.
Nice. Do you want to talk about what epics is in general though?
So epics, when I did it at least, it was kind of, I think it's changed a lot. It was freshman year. But ours was community service project based. Now it's just kind of projects in general that have to do kind of with an engineering focus in general. You don't have to be in engineering to be in epics. I think that's still the same, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we actually had some landscape architecture people, environmental science people in my group. So mine was neighborhood sustainability. And mine specifically was working with a professor here on campus who wanted to build a library attachment to her existing home. As a freshman, I had absolutely zero idea what was happening. But I was kind of in charge of communication between her and my project team. So this group met 3 hours a week. For mine, it was Friday morning. It's kind of like a lab time. You meet with your group in class, you have a teaching assistant who can help you, but otherwise you kind of set out into the real world on your own. So for me, we went and visited her house, kind of took a tour, figured out where she wanted to add this attachment. We built up blueprints, did all the kind of things you would do in the real world. For me as a freshman, it was a great experience because I had nothing to talk about with recruiters really, except for first year engineering. And they loved hearing about my epics experience because it was something actually real that was going to be implemented. So you can actually do things like work with Riley's Children's Hospital. There's a lot of biomedical projects where we've actually built prosthetics for children, where you can work with zoos, Habitat for Humanity. There's kind of, when I did it, there were about 17 different epics teams. Now I think there's
over 50.
Okay, a lot more,
a lot more.
than 5 years.
Yeah.
But epics is an amazing opportunity, definitely.
Yeah, basically the whole idea is to give you hands-on experience working on an actual project for an actual client, and it's almost always a community service project for the local community, maybe somebody on campus, somebody in the greater Lafayette, West Lafayette area, or in the state. We also have some programs that work with global partners. So there's all sorts of opportunities for epics, and so you can actually do epics as a variant of first year engineering, where instead of taking engineering 131 and 132, you take engineering, I think it's 133, and it's only in the fall, and so they compressed all the info you're learning in those 2 semesters into 1 semester, which sounds chaotic and like jam-packed, but instead of doing all those various team projects, which take up a lot of engineering 131 and 132, that's replaced by your epics project. You're going to be paired with an epics team based on your interests, and you'll work on that your first and your second semester. And so the first semester with the 133, you're working on your epics project, but you're also learning all the other engineering skills. You're learning about the different majors. You're getting all those sorts of a thing. but then you're just working on your EPICS project for your first and second semesters. And you can get involved in that by doing the EPICS learning community. There's also the VIP learning community, which also allows you to take the EPICS, the Engineering 131 or 133 EPICS class. So there's two different ways of doing EPICS your first year. The only way to be involved in EPICS as a first semester freshman is through the learning community, either the EPICS learning community or the VIP learning community. Otherwise, you can join it as soon as your second semester on campus. They just fill up with the freshmen that are doing the learning community the first semester in the fall, but you can join it your spring semester if you don't want to do the learning community. So all sorts of different ways to do first year engineering. I do want to talk about the transition to major process and how that works real quick. This is a topic of concern that comes up from families. Am I going to get the major that I want? Short answer is yes. It was around 94% of our students. Do you spill again?
No, I think I just lost my microphone.
No,
you're good.
It's
It's
there.
Oh, I got it.
I was just blending in my shirt. I was just like, I made some noise.
So 94% of our students last year that were freshmen in first year engineering received their first choice in major to start this past fall as sophomores. So it's really just the bottom 6 to 8% of the class that did not get their first choice. And the way that it works is when you choose the major you want, you'll choose your primary choice, and you can also choose an alternate, a second choice backup. And then it basically just comes down to space. Most all of our programs have enough space for everyone that wants it. We only have a couple programs every year that will have more students selected than they've got spots. This last year it was mechanical engineering, aeronautical, astronautical engineering, and biomedical by one student. They only had to turn away one student, which is really exceptional, that one student. But and then our interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary engineering program, they also had to turn away only one student. But for mechanical engineering, it was around, I want to say 82% of students that put it as their first choice got it. For aeronautical engineering, it was 88% of students that put it as their first choice got it. Overall, 94% of our students got their first choice. So there's, and so when we do have more students selecting their spots, it's based on your grades. Students who have a 3.2 GPA as well as a 3.2 in the first year engineering required courses, so not counting any electives, are essentially guaranteed their first choice. Even then, I think last year, every student that had higher than 3.2 got their first choice. Even students that had below a 3.2, most of them got their first choice. So again, it's not supposed to be a stressor. It's really, as long as you do well in your classes, as long as you take advantage of the resources available to you to do well in your classes, you're going to be totally fine. The small percentage of students that didn't get their first choice, they have options to them as well. They can go into a second choice major. In engineering, they can stay in first year engineering. A lot of them do this. They'll stay in first year engineering for another semester, retake some classes, bring their grades up, try again, and then get their first choice. And then other students will decide that maybe engineering is not for them, and they'll switch out of engineering as well. That's their choice. They can do that as well. Again, almost 90% of students are staying in engineering. 95% of students are staying at Purdue after their first year. So we have a really good track record. As long as you do well, you're going to be totally fine. It's not meant to be stressful or a weed out or a highly selective process. And no matter what major you want, there are no additional hoops on a major by major basis. All of them is the same process, just choosing a major. Years ago, it used to be if you wanted biomedical engineering, you had to find like 100 different medical uses for a straw. For civil engineering, you had to do something else. So we got rid of all that to where it's just a straightforward process, no extra hoops for any of the majors. We want students to study what they want to study. As long as you're successful and do well in your class, you're going to be fine. And quite honestly, if you struggle in first year engineering, that's kind of a wake-up call. It's not going to get any easier, so you need to reevaluate your study habits. So it's all meant to really help our students and as long as be successful. So that's my little spiel on transition to major. It's really not bad. The vast majority of our students are getting their first choice with no issues. So, all right, honors. We had some other follow-up questions on honors. Can I apply after freshman year? Yes, you can apply when you're on campus. If you just go to honors.purdue.edu, there's a current students, like current Purdue students tab, I think, or future current students, something like that. And you'll see the application to apply as a current student, so it's not like a one and done shot. Are many students in it? Am I at a disadvantage if I'm not in the honors college? I don't remember the exact percentage. I want to say it's like 10% of engineering students are in the honors college. They try to have the honors college be, like the majors be representative of how much of campus they are. So engineering is about 30% of undergraduate campus. So they make up about 30% of the honors college. It's about 10% of engineering students, if that. Employers don't care.
They don't care, no.
They don't. Honors is great for those that want to go the extra mile, go above and beyond the traditional plan of study, thinking beyond how they can apply their major to other aspects of society. That's one of the things they focus on, is thinking outside of your major. and not to look for a traditional plan of study. You're going to take a little bit extra rigorous courses. So it's great for those that want to do that sort of a thing. It's not a status program. It's not I'm an honor student, I'm better than everyone else.
Definitely not.
It's not how it works. And so you can do some cool things by being involved in honors, but you can do really cool things without being in honors. And we've had a 95% placement rate for engineering students, and only like maybe 10% of our engineering students are honors students. So no matter what, you're getting jobs, you're getting great jobs. It's all about do honors if it sounds of interest to you, but if it doesn't sound of interest to you, don't worry about doing it. Don't feel pressured to join it, to apply to it. It's not necessary. It's great for those that want to do it, but it's not necessary. All right, we've got under half an hour left. So let's talk about some of the student life things. We'll have a whole broadcast dedicated to this later on, but we're having some questions about it. I do want to get to this. I saw this like before we even started. Somebody had made the comment of like, my student, like the one thing that would prevent them from coming there is that we're in the middle of cornfields. First of all, I think the nearest cornfield's several miles away, so we're like not in the middle.
No, definitely not. No, I mean like we're far away.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
I know corn. We are far away.
Yeah, he's from Iowa. You want to talk about cornfields? No offense to Iowa. I'm kidding. Sorry. But I mean, what do you guys say to that concern? I had this too when I was looking as a high schooler, of us being in kind of middle of nowhere, Indiana. What's your guys' response to that?
You spend most of your time on campus anyway, so there's no corn on campus, so it's not like you would notice, so it doesn't really seem that way.
Yeah, I would say something, I mean, I've seen some other college campuses too. Something that's pretty cool about Purdue is it definitely feels like a very dedicated college campus. So you'll see a lot of campuses that, might be interspersed with like a city, or, it might be kind of unclear where the campus boundaries are. It's pretty cool, I think. Something a lot of people like is that Purdue, like when you're on campus, it feels like, you're surrounded by, that college environment. So, obviously that doesn't necessarily just mean like you're on academic campus or whatever. I mean, like, obviously, there's a lot of people that live off campus, when you're not, a freshman anymore. But even when you're a freshman and sophomore, on residential campus, there's definitely a community of Purdue students there that I think it makes you feel a little bit closer to the other people on campus. And like Courtney had said, I mean, you're spending most of your time on campus anyway, just between, being involved with organizations here, going to your classes, doing other programming events on campus. That you don't honestly even think about the fact that, you're in Indiana, or in the middle of cornfield, Indiana.
Not that there's anything wrong with that anyway.
And, not that there's anything wrong with that, but, it sometimes feels like it's not as exciting, right? But there's a lot of exciting things to do on campus, and that's where you're going to primarily be spending your time. But, I mean, there's other opportunities too, if you're missing, like if you're from, more urban area or something like that. I mean, Indianapolis is a great city. It's an hour away from campus. Chicago, third largest city in the United States, is 2.5 hours away from campus. So like, you can take weekend trips there too, if you do, want to get away from campus. But I mean, there's tons and tons of stuff to do here too.
Yeah, my friends and I one night, we were like really hankering for some barbecue. It was like a Thursday night. So we drove to Louisville and just ate barbecue, and then like
to Louisville.
Yeah, it's like
it's only like 3 hours.
I thought you were saying Indy.
No, it's like 2.5 hours away.
It's not that far.
So like we just drove to Louisville one night and ate barbecue, and then like walked around for a while and got back at like 2 a.m. But like you can do that. Like it was really fun. It was just like we just wanted to go, so we did.
DNR Barbecue right next to 65 here in Lafayette is like the best barbecue in town.
Okay.
Didn't even have to drive 2.5 hours.
We just really wanted to do something like that.
That's awesome. But I mean, it's true though. I mean, we'll take weekend trips to nearby cities.
Yeah. That's true, but I mean, there's other things to do too. I mean, obviously on Purdue's campus, there's a lot of things to do. But I mean, we do have like downtown West Lafayette. I mean, while it's not the biggest city, there's certainly things to do there too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
even downtown Lafayette, right across the river, they have a lot of festivals and musicians come in. We also Purdue brings in a lot of Broadway acts. They bring in musicians. They bring in comedians.
Bill Nye was here.
Bill Nye was
like a week and a half ago. Like Chesley Sullenberger, the guy who landed the plane on the Hudson, was back. Boeing's CEO is going to be here tomorrow night.
Boeing's CEO. We have musical performances. Young the Giant just came here like 2 weeks ago.
Waka Flocka was here freshman year.
Waka Flocka was here. It's true. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of people coming.
Scott Kelly was here tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know.
Huge fan.
Yeah. So yeah, he was here tonight.
No one told me that.
Sold out.
I'm sad.
It did sold out.
Big sad.
So I mean, when I was a student here, Lady Gaga came to campus. She actually had to cancel the first time she got sick, but then she came back to make it up. Yeah.
Well, they had Macklemore. They had a lot of like.
We've had Macklemore. We had Avicii. We had
Avicii? What the?
Panic at the Disco.
Panic at the Disco was here.
Yeah, that was right before we came in.
Bro, what?
Cage the Elephant was here.
Yeah, they were here.
Walk the Moon was
Walk
here.
the Moon. They were here
The
like right before they got big.
Yeah,
Yeah. So lots of musicians come through, like big names. You get some of them are free. Like I think Parachute
Walk the Moon was free.
Walk the Moon was free. But at the very least, if it does charge, like you get student rates, which are really cheap. They're usually capped at like $35 max, even for like nicer seats. We have Broadway acts come through. Spamalot is going to be here later this month if you're a Monty Python fan. I've seen a few recently. I can't even think of what all I've seen. I've seen Beauty and the Beast. I've seen Blue Man Group here. I've seen Avenue Q. Lots of really cool things come through, and these are actually like traveling Broadway acts. They're not just like local like civic theater. Not to put anything down, but like they're like the real thing, which is really cool. So you don't even have to leave campus. When I was a student here, I hardly ever left campus. I never felt like I needed to.
Yeah, you don't feel like you need to.
So I mean, there's certainly lots of really cool things to do in Lafayette and West Lafayette. But I would say the majority of our students don't even go to those. And as a now like townie that lives in town, I can say I hardly ever see students off campus because there's so many things to do here.
That's true.
Yeah, and the COREC, like the COREC is I think it's the second largest in the country. It has 3 saunas, which is like
what's the COREC, Teddy?
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. So it's our recreational facility.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time there.
Fancy gym.
The France Cordova Recreational Sports Center is the official name. It will always be called the COREC by students.
Yeah, but it has like 3 saunas, has a 3-story climbing wall, smoothie bar. Like for me, I weight train a lot, so it has one of the nicest collections of weight training equipment I've ever seen.
There's like 8 basketball gyms, like
17 racquetball courts.
Pools. Yeah, multiple pools.
Yeah, Olympic pools, like really, anything you can want.
Right. Something that's really popular here too is intramural sports. So you don't have to be a D1 athlete if you want to play sports here. I mean, if you are a D1 athlete, welcome. We love them in engineering. But there are a lot of teams where you can get involved. There's a wide range of sports you can play. I mean, popular ones are like basketball, soccer. Our organization's putting on an ultimate frisbee team. Sand volleyball is really big, indoor volleyball. I mean, there's tons and tons of sports that you can play.
There's like inner tube water polo.
Log rolling.
Are you on the log? Log rolling?
I know about it. I haven't done it.
I've played
somebody in PSEF is in log rolling.
Wait, what?
Sounds awesome.
Well, we talked about it at the last one of these.
I know, because there was somebody else on PSEF had mentioned that they were on it.
Whoa. But like basically like one person stands on one end of like a log kind of and another stands on the other end. You try to like run the other person off. It's wild. It's so intense if you watch it.
Yeah, so there's everything you could want to do. I played in a intramural euchre tournament. If you guys are familiar with euchre, I don't know how many people know.
Very much a Midwestern thing.
Pretty Midwestern thing. You'll learn if you come here.
It's a card game.
So I mean, there's tons and tons of stuff to do there too, and that's really popular as well. So a lot of the times you'll see like floors in residential in like res halls. We'll put them on, so you might be doing it with like some of the people you live with. That's a pretty common thing. You can just make it with one of the organizations you're in. You can make it with just a group of your friends. So it's really cool if you want to continue playing sports or if you want to start playing sports. When you're here, there's tons and tons of opportunities to do that.
And some are competitive, and others are just doing it for fun.
Right.
So you also don't have to worry about like practicing 5 times a week or anything like that. Some of them
Right.
do. I mean, so you can be as competitive or not as you want to be with these things.
Yeah.
Speaking of like athletics and sports, we actually just had somebody just ask, with the rigor of engineering programs, I think it's clear that you guys are still able to be involved in things.
Yeah.
But how about sporting events? They were asking about, football, basketball. I mean, football, we're recovering. We're getting better.
We are getting better.
We are
good.
on
the way up.
Finally,
I don't care what anyone says.
Everything is in place that we're only going to get better from here. We've got a great coach.
We had a
we've got great
fantastic recruiting
facilities.
class.
We've got one of the top recruiting classes in the country coming in next year. It's
at
exciting.
least 1 5-star.
This is the first time I've been excited about Purdue football since I've been here. I've been here for almost 11 years. I guess I got excited when we brought Hazel in, but that ended up not. And then basketball. I mean, basketball's great too.
We're number 11.
We're number 11 in the
We were
country.
number 2 last year.
Basketball games are awesome.
We
here, absolutely.
had record attendance at our basketball games
We
this
sell
year.
out every single game.
We did.
Yep.
I think we sold out almost every single Big Ten game this year, which is a record for us.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. You get to be involved in some phenomenal sports and get that
They're
atmosphere.
amazing.
The atmosphere inside Mackey Arena. If you don't care, even if you don't care about basketball,
I
go to
don't
one of the
like
games
sports.
because the atmosphere
love
is
basketball
incredible. It is so cool to be inside that arena. It's so loud. The fans are so passionate. But we're also really classy too. Like we're not like some other schools down south that got into some national media attention for their chance. We are a very intense environment. We're regarded as one of the top, environments for college basketball. So it's a lot of fun. So you get to partake in those. You get the boarding pass, gets you season tickets to every single Purdue sporting event, and it's $99.
$99, yeah.
And they get you football, basketball, volleyball, soccer, all of the athletic D1 athletic programs we have. You get season tickets to all of them.
Yeah.
We have over 70 engineering students that are in D1 athletics. So you can definitely do both. We have several. It's like over a dozen at least that are on the football team.
Yeah. So are.
We've got a couple that are on the women's basketball team.
Yeah, just in my civil engineering class, I know we have one of our really good women's basketball players and also a golfer too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How about we just got a question about Greek life. Anybody involved in Greek life? You are.
Yeah.
What's that kind of like? How does that play in with engineering?
So I joined my sophomore year actually instead of freshman year. A lot of people do. Freshman year they get involved in Greek life. I waited. I had no idea I wanted to be involved. So sophomore year is when I went through the entire what we call the recruitment process. But it's also something that I spent my freshman year trying to decide if I had the time to join a sorority. And so for me, doing my freshman year kind of I guess alone without being involved in Greek life was perfect for me because I knew what my workload was going to be like. So I think it's kind of knowing a lot of whether or not you're good at time management because joining a Greek house often takes up a lot of time. So when you're doing that, it's definitely, I did everything. I did PSEF, I was in a sorority, I was in the ballroom Latin and ballroom dance team. I was kind of doing a lot my sophomore year, but I managed to manage my time correctly. But for me, doing more kind of makes it easier for me to organize my time. So for me personally, it was amazing. It's how I met people outside of engineering and hung out with them all the time. And I'm still living with girls in my house and everything, so it was great for me.
Yeah, and the Greek life is one of those things where I think we actually have among the highest participation rate for
It's
a
about
public
20%.
school in terms of percentage. But it's also one of those things though, it's if you want to do it, there's lots of opportunities to do it. But if you don't want to do it, that's okay too.
Yeah.
You're not an outcast. There's not cliques forming all across campus. When you meet somebody new, the first question's not what house are you in?
Yeah, for sure.
I never did Greek life. None of you guys are involved in Greek life, and we all have very active social lives too. So I mean, it's one of the things. If you want to do it, absolutely have the opportunity to do so. There's a lot of houses to choose from, and if you don't want to do it, you don't have to either. And so it's really cool that there's no pressure either way to be involved if you don't want to. Let's see. We're getting down to the wire. We've got about 13 minutes left. So we've talked about student clubs and teams. How about some team project opportunities? So they said some colleges have rocket teams, solar car teams, that sort of a thing. What sort of those opportunities do you guys know of around campus?
Yeah, so within mechanical engineering, there's a lot actually. So there's all the design, build, test car teams. We have 4. We have Formula, SAE, Baja, SAE, electric car, and then there's another one.
Solar racing car. I know
Yeah, solar. You're right.
Solar.
Yep.
Solar car.
So those are all racing teams. 2 of them are housed within the mechanical engineering building. They have their own room with lab, and they basically just build a new car every year. So they build it from scratch, and then they compete in competitions around the country. So I think we got number 11 in the country last year, and there's hundreds of colleges submitting cars to come. And that's stuff that students can get involved in from the time they're a freshman. There's also Orbital. They design a new rocket every year that they launch to 30,000 plus feet. There's a ton of other ones. Do you guys know of any others?
Well, there's a lot for civil. I don't know.
Yeah,
If you can speak
so
more about it.
through the American Society of Civil Engineers, which is a professional organization that goes above the college level. It's actually professional throughout the country. They have university chapters. So at Purdue, we have a chapter as well. And in those university chapters, they have design challenges that they put on. Then you'll go to your conference in your area with other teams. So for example, at Purdue, we're in the Great Lakes region, so we compete against other schools in the Great Lakes region. So the design teams that come from that are concrete canoe, seismic design, and the steel bridge. So for concrete canoe, you're designing a canoe out of concrete that has to float on its own, and then you race it against other schools, usually in March or April, so it's a little chilly. But you actually race the canoe against other schools among being designed for your actual concrete itself. Steel bridge is kind of neat because you design the steel bridge to meet certain requirements, and they have a fake river. It's blue paint. That they actually have to build the bridge at the competition on.
What's the size of this bridge? What size are we talking?
So it's can be up to 30 feet long usually.
It's bigger than I thought.
It's specified every year. And so what's kind of funny about it is that it's timed, right? So you have to do it in a certain amount of time. So if you drop any bolts or anything, the clock stops. You have to pick up your bolts. You're not allowed to do anything until all the bolts are picked up, and then they'll start it again, and then you can continue doing stuff. So that's pretty interesting. And then seismic design, they use balsa wood. They'll build a tower, and then they go to competition, and it's actually shaken on a shake table, and then they sell them at the end, actually.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
cool.
Interesting.
Nice. I haven't heard a lot of those. Now, when I did hear about the concrete canoe, I had no idea that concrete could flow. I'll be honest. I didn't know that was possible. So you learn something new every day. Some other cool things I've heard of over time. We've got the Rocketry Club. We have through the IEEE, which is like the Professional Society for Electrical and Computer Engineers. We have a university chapter here. It's actually open to all students and all engineering majors. And they have a variety. I forget how many. I want to say it's at least 6 different teams that do different projects. They've got underwater drones. They've got aerial drones. They've got land-based drones. And so there's opportunities to get involved in that. We've got the Purdue Lunabotics team. They build lunar robots, and they compete in a NASA competition every year with that.
I was on that for a semester.
Nice. Yeah. We've got a team that's been competing in the annual, what's the SpaceX with the Hyperloop.
Hyperloop, yeah.
We've got a team of engineers from across all the different disciplines that have been competing in SpaceX's Hyperloop competition every year. We made it to the finals, I think, the last 2 years. So there's all sorts of opportunities, no matter what your field is, what your passions are, to even get involved in things that aren't necessarily part of your major, but you're interested in. There's all sorts of those sorts of things to get involved in. We have a phenomenal makerspace for a lot of these teams are able to use, as well as just for your own personal pet projects. The Bechtel Innovation Design Center, BIDC. I'm sure one of my students can link to it. It's brand new. It's about a year old at this point. They've got CNC machines, milling machines. They've got like a studio for the butane torches. I'm totally blanking on the name for that room. We've got a professional like automotive paint room in there, so it's like this enclosed room. You can put a car in there and like paint it. We've got 3D printers, laser cutters, watercolors, just general collaborative space to build whatever it is you want to do. It's free to use for all of our students at Purdue. You typically just pay for any materials costs. There are students that work there, and you could work there too if you're passionate about it, to help all the students use the machinery. I think at one point, I don't know if they still are, but Nucor was like donating all the aluminum for any projects that wanted to use aluminum.
Yeah, all the scrap too.
So there's all sorts of resources to kind of fuel your passions. Downstairs here in Armstrong, we have a 3D print lab. I'm actually a member of the 3D print club. It's open to staff too, which is great. And they have your traditional extrusion 3D printers. They have like a dozen or so. They also have SLA printers, which is the puddle of resin at the base. Uses IR lasers to harden it. It's like the cutting edge of like home cool 3D printing. It's really cool stuff. If you join the club, you get free prints on the extrusion printers. For the SLA printers, you buy the material yourself. You buy it in bulk, so it's like super cheap still. So you get access to some really cool toys to play with as a student at Purdue too. So both through organized activities or just your own things that you want to do. Purdue is also really cool that if you have an idea, if you create a product, or you start a business, as an undergrad, you keep all the intellectual property rights. We even have startup incubators. We have co-working lab spaces to help you get your product or your idea off the ground. And so as long as it's not a research project you're doing with a professor, even if it's a project you did in class, as long as it's your idea and you're an undergrad at Purdue, Purdue lets you keep all the intellectual property rights. We'll help you get it to production, but you keep all the rights, which is really, really cool. There's a lot of universities that say, if you use our equipment, our resources, we're taking a share. Purdue doesn't do that for undergrads, which is really neat. So we have had several student startups lately. We've got one that's an industrial engineering. I think it's 2 industrial engineers and a computer science student called Froyo Express. The first station, the first vending machine is actually in one of the markets on campus. And it's basically self-serve frozen yogurt, dairy-free, and it bills you on however much you dispense. So instead of having to have a whole Froyo store, you just have this little stand in a convenience store. And so it's minimal upkeep, it's easy to stock, and it's then easier for the consumer to come up and buy it and pay. So they had that idea. They put together the machine, all the software, the hardware for it. They got several rounds of funding from Purdue, thousands of dollars in startup funds. And that's now off the ground. They've got the first prototype there. I think later this year they're going to try to put a second one in the Union here on campus. We had a bike share program that started last year called VioRide. It's dockless bikes, so you don't have to worry about dropping it off at a specific place. It has GPS. You just bring up your phone, it'll tell you where to pick it up. It's like the Bird scooters, the Lime scooters, but with bikes, where it's dockless. That was a student startup. So all sorts of opportunities for entrepreneurship, for getting involved in activities, for pet projects, whatever it is you may want to do. We also have, we had a question that it's great right now. It's, what's the weather like at Purdue? Today is terrible.
It was
abnormally cold yesterday and today. My apologies to anybody that visited on the Purdue Community Day yesterday. We've been in the single digits and the below zero wind chills the last couple days. That is not normal for us. If it were, I'd have moved a long time ago. I hate winter. Generally, though, I mean, it's really not bad. It gets a little cold in winter. We don't get a whole lot of snow typically. We've got a lot of snow this year.
It didn't snow last winter.
Yeah, we didn't really get much snow.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, this is out of my 5 years. This is the worst winter I've seen.
Yeah, I think this is the wettest winter we've had in several years. And so generally, it's not bad. It's pretty warm in like August.
Get a parka. That's about it.
But yeah, when the winter comes, just get a nice winter coat and you're fine.
Yeah.
It's mostly just cold and windy here. Maybe a little gray, not a lot of sunshine, but it's not, sub-zero the whole time. It's usually like 20s at the coldest. We'll have some like in the teens or in the single digits, but that's like 1 week typically. This winter has been probably the most brutal we've had in a while, and that's a rarity.
Yep.
We're tough.
Yeah.
We're getting
Yeah,
it.
we're gritty.
Our second largest student population outside of for out-of-state students, it's Indiana, obviously our largest population, then it's Illinois, but then it's California. It's our second largest out-of-state student population. So we've got a lot of students from California, and they can survive. No matter where you come from, you can survive too. So, in fact, my allergies are killing me tonight. So that's the weather. So we've got about 4 minutes left. I don't really know what we want to finish up with, our little parting thoughts. I will say, be on the lookout for an email from our office tomorrow. I think the title is something like Purdue Engineers are on Slack. It's basically just inviting you to join us on our new Slack workspace. I've got around 100 current engineering students from almost all 50 states. I'm working on that, as well as several different countries from around the world, and the opportunity for you to engage with our current students directly, as well as each channel. There's a channel for each state, as well as regions of the world. So you also get to meet admitted students from around you in your home state or your home region. So it's a really exciting program that I manage. You'll get an email around noon Eastern tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, to join us on that channel to directly interact with current students from around you, as well as admitted students from around you as well. We have several more broadcasts coming up throughout this semester. We're going to have one specifically for parents in 2 weeks from today for their questions. I know there's probably a lot of parents tonight as well, but we're going to have one dedicated just to the parents. Then on April 2nd, we're going to have one focusing on student life. So some of the things we talked about tonight, ways to get involved on campus as students. On the 16th, we'll have academics and majors. So we'll talk more about some of the specific majors, how students choose that, the opportunities within the different variety, 17 different engineering majors. We'll talk more about those in depth. And we'll have a final one on April 23rd, basically last minute questions. May 1st is the deadline on when you need to choose where you want to go. And so that's kind of our last minute. Anything else you want to know or ask before you decide where you want to go on May 1st. So some important deadlines. May 1st, as I mentioned, is when you need to decide where you want to go. If you decide you come to Purdue, the housing application is due on May 5th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. It's not your local time, but it's Eastern Time. As long as you have your housing app in by May 5th, there's no downside applying now versus on May 4th. The housing process does not start until after that May 5th deadline. So it's not first come, first serve. We want to give our students the entire time until May 1st to take their time to decide where they want to go. So none of our things are first come, first serve. Housing is not first come, first serve. Learning communities, that's a separate that's a separate application from your housing app. Those are also due though on May 5th. Those are not first come, first serve. So really nothing is first come, first serve at Purdue. Other universities might be different, so you want to keep that in mind. But from our perspective, we're trying to give our students the full time that they need to make a decision on where they want to go. We hope it's Purdue. It may not be, and that's okay. What's most important to us is that you go where you feel you fit in. What's right for you. That might be Purdue, but it might be somewhere else too. We just want to make it as informed as a decision as possible. We're all obviously very passionate about Purdue because it was the right place for us. We hope it might be the right place for you, but we want to find that for you and help you determine if we are or not. So thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We didn't get to all the questions. There were a lot that came in. Feel free to email us anytime you want. It's future-engineers@purdue.edu. We've got around a dozen current engineering students that work in our office Monday through Friday. We have 50 some odd people in PSEF, which is, I guess 60. We have never had 60. Yep. Never had you guys introduce what PSEF is. Who wants to say what PSEF is? Teddy?
Yeah, Teddy, take it away.
Yeah, so PSEF, we're the Purdue Student Engineering Foundation, and we're pretty much the organization that hosts all people who come here that are interested in engineering. So we're the main engineering facilities tour guides. We host panels, information sessions about engineering. We have a really cool event called Pizza with PSEF, where we eat pizza with admitted students and admitted families kind of the night before, which we call Purdue's for Me Days, which are our big tour days. So if you guys are interested in that, you can sign up and have the chance to interact with one of us for about an hour and a half and get out any questions that you may have. But Yeah, do you guys have any?
See, those pizza parties fill up pretty quick. I
Yeah.
don't know how often they open up for
They're
registration.
popular.
If you ever see a registration, you want to get on that first come. But even if you are able to attend that because they're full, I will say all of our Produce For Me events are full, but there's still ways to visit on those days. Email our office, we can give you more details on how to do that. Anytime you want to know about how to visit campus, email our office. That's what we do. We host most of these events, or we'll work with admissions for the admissions-related events. But we are here to help you learn more about our programs, how to have a good visit, learn all the things you want to know. So anytime you guys need help, we're who you want to reach out to. If we can't help you, we'll hand it off to PSEF as well. So any majors we don't have in our student staff is certainly covered through PSEF. So you've got all sorts of resources to learn more about our programs and determine if it's the right fit for you. So be on the lookout for the email to join us on Slack. Be on the lookout for future emails inviting you to future broadcasts. Email us. You can follow us on social media. If you go to our website, purdue.edu/futureengineers, at the very bottom of the website, there's icons for all of our social media channels. Follow us on any one that you want to follow us on. We're really trying to make it as successful as possible. Choosing a college is a big decision, and we just want to make sure it's informed. We try not to be super pushy about Purdue. It's hard because we really love Purdue, but we really, again, just want to help you find the right fit for you and what it's like here. So thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your night. I'm going to try to catch the second half of the Purdue basketball game that's going on. I'm dying to know what the score is right now. But have a great night. Boiler up and let us know if there's anything else we can do for you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.